Hey, I wanted to make this video for a couple of reasons. I like watching these types of videos for inspiration, so I want to tell my story, hopefully to inspire someone else. I don't really like talking about my film to other people, but if someone's thinking about making their own no-budget feature, this video shows at least what to and what not to do. There are many stories I can think of while I made this film, and I want to focus on 4. So let's begin. I was born and raised in Reykjavik, Iceland. I always wanted to be a filmmaker. I made my first short film when I was 10. Later I almost only made shorts with guns and violence, mostly video game inspired. You could say I was in the Freddie W. era of filmmaking. A couple of years of doing that, my taste changed. I was more closed off and started to write script after script. I spent days on scripts that went nowhere and were never made into anything. I was starting to deal with mental issues, mainly depression and anxiety, and I should have gotten help instead of shutting myself inside. In 2015, after making a 30-minute short film, which was an experimental one-shot ghost film, I immediately started writing a feature film about my own experience with relationships and first love, mostly gathering scenes from other half-baked scripts I've written. The initial idea was relationship abuse. Not that I've ever been in one, it's just something I wanted to explore. The insecurities and the low self-esteem, which I was an expert in. The pitch, an improvisational film about teenage love and underlying mental abuse. I had about 80 pages or so. The script contained a loose scene description and loose dialogue, nothing I wanted to translate directly into film. I had the script, and what came next was a 2-year personal battle with depression, breakdowns, and growing up. Oh, and also making this film. In November of 2016, I cast the first actor, a girl I played in bands with. She fit the look of what I was after for the role, and she was just a fun person to be around. I asked her, "Hey, I want to make a film. You want to star in it?" She said, "Sure." "So, like an extra?" I said, "No, the lead." She was quiet afterwards. She thought about it, but she was on board. We spent the next few weeks looking for the other lead. It took such a long time because this was an intimate story. She had to be comfortable with her co-star, as she would be with her boyfriend. While looking for our other lead, we found some supporting actors that fit other roles. We found our lead in January of 2017, Sigurjón, and we started shooting in February of 2017, a month later. I intentionally shot the first scene where the two main characters meet, with no rehearsal beforehand. I would put lav mics on them and just follow them around downtown on a Saturday night. They discovered things about each other that they didn't know. Then at the end of the first scene, the first kiss. I told the actors to kiss him at a very specific moment, but I didn't tell the other actor. There came a very spontaneous moment, which is kind of sweet and very clumsy. After that, it was smooth sailing from there. I'm kidding, of course. 4 notable days. A day in the middle of production. During shooting, nothing was planned beforehand, production-wise. Amateur, I know. Every location we shot at was found maybe a day before we started shooting at that location. The shots you're seeing now were shot at the apartment we got for about 4 days. The whole space was used, the kitchen, bedroom, living room, and the bathroom. We shot most of the apartment scenes, except for a very crucial scene between the actors. I was saving it for last. Then we lost the apartment. Very unexpectedly. I scrambled together for a new location. After looking around, we got to shoot at my pal's and his 3 roommates' apartment. Great, it was a fairly big apartment with great space, but there was a problem. We had to reshoot a lot of scenes so it would match with the other apartment in the edit. Anyway, we showed up on a Sunday morning, no one answered. I called my pal, he was about an hour away, something came up, I think. The apartment was a mess, there was a party the night before or something. The roommates didn't even know we were coming. I'm not blaming anyone, it's just poor planning on my part. We set up for a while and started shooting, and the boom mic didn't work. After fiddling around with it, I figured it was the XLR cable that was damaged. So I decided to drive home and get another one. I'm in my car, I have my sound guy with me. I'm about halfway there and a car crashed into me. Nothing major, it was just a dent, but both of us drivers had to call a guy that came to tell us what to do. We had to sign some paperwork for the insurance and it took forever. I was stressed and pissed. After that I went home, I got another cable, went back to the location and plugged the bad boy in, and it didn't work. The mic was the problem. We were about 6 hours into the day and it was getting dark. We couldn't shoot. It was about 6 scenes with mostly dialogue, and there was no way to shoot it without our mic. I remember everyone looking at me for answers. My mind was racing. I wanted to throw all the equipment off the table, smashing everything and maybe punching someone in the face. But I said quietly, seemingly jokingly, "I'm losing my mind," which relieved some tension. I said, "We can't shoot today. Let's find another day to shoot." "Sorry about this," I said. We packed up our things and left. I learned at that moment what it means to be a director. You have to be ready to come up with a solution or a compromise. You're in control of the tension and vibe on set. You're the leader of this sinking ship, so you better have an answer for when things go wrong. The breakup scene. Spoiler. Kidding. So, at this point in production, I had recently had a bad breakup after a 4-year relationship. I was a mess, to say the least. And we were shooting a breakup scene. A very raw, real and spontaneous breakup scene. The crew was smaller than ever. I designed it that way. Just me shooting and directing, a sound guy, and the 2 actors, and maybe 1 assistant on set. We took our time setting up the scenes. Remember, we didn't use a shot list or storyboard or anything, just improv on all parts. After all of the prep, we set up the shot and there was no SD card in the camera. This was the most humiliating moment I've ever experienced. The actors finally were in character, everyone ready, and I had made the most amateur mistake in the world. Needless to say, I drove an illegal speed to my house to get the SD card and a couple more just to be safe. I drove back. Thankfully, the actors were just rehearsing and talking about the scene and letting the character brew for a bit while I was gone, which meant I could just show up, put the card in and start shooting. This was the toughest day of shooting emotionally for all of us. We had been shooting for a year at this point. I asked them to break up for real, which means as if they were never to see each other again, which was kind of true. They knew exactly what I meant. I had them do a lot of takes and try different lines, beats and motives. The plan was to mix them all together in the edit and make the scene inconsistent, but in an intentional way. At one point, my actress had a minor mental breakdown. I guess she was reliving some moments of her life. I took her aside and talked to her calmly. I told her that she was doing an amazing job, that she was showing a lot of honesty. She took her time. I paused everything for a bit. When she was ready, we got back to shooting. My responsibility as director at that point was to make sure that the actors knew that they were safe to share their feelings. It was a bittersweet feeling at the end. I didn't believe we made it this far. I felt an immense amount of gratitude and relief. The best day of shooting. We filmed about 90% of the scenes between the main actor and his friend character. The actor who played the friend is my dear friend to this day, and he elevated the energy to new heights, which the production needed. He was also producing the film alongside me at this point. This was the most productive day on set. The most stressful day on the set. I mentioned some pretty stressful shooting days, but nothing compares to these 2 scenes. I'm putting 2 scenes here because they were both equally stressful. The 2 party scenes. If anyone has shot a party scene, they're almost always very difficult to pull off. A lot of people feeding everyone and keeping the energy up. While it was only me shooting and maybe 2 other people behind the camera, the sound guy and a PA. The first party scene was shot at my aunt and uncle's place, and the other was shot at one of my actors' parents' house. This was the first day I had to hurry up and finish the scene on time. I wrote the shots down on a piece of paper on the day, to have a loose idea on what we had to do. A moment on both days. One or more of the extras didn't know who the director was. My main actors were so free to do their own thing, and they had so much input. I was just observing behind the camera, basically, and I let them do their thing. I rarely came over to give them direction, and I didn't really coordinate the scenes with all the extras. From that moment on, I think it's so important to let everyone know who the director is, who's calling the shots, who's making the decisions. This was probably the reason why these scenes are the worst in the movie, in my opinion. I didn't get the moments and the performances I wanted out of the extras and actors. At this point, we started an Indiegogo campaign to finish the editing. After we wrapped general photography, we had gathered some attention from word of mouth. We started marketing the film. One thing I did from the beginning, I edited the film after each day of production, both for myself to see if we got everything I needed, also to show other people to get them interested in the project. We wanted to have the screening in the biggest theater in Iceland. It cost a bit of money, but now there were 3 of us producing and marketing, not just me. We all chipped in. One highlight is that we were interviewed by one of the top news stations here in Iceland about the film. People were genuinely interested in what we were making. It all started as myself doing all the work, making something from the heart. Near the end, we had all developed a friendship that still flourishes. Now we had to assemble the film in light speed mode. This was the first time in production we had a deadline, because up until that point I was just shooting without a complete goal in mind, just to make the movie. But now they were asking us to have it ready before an exact date. I did not like this stage of making the movie. It was not pleasant. I'm talking breakdowns, depression, and on top of that I had to go to work every day at a furniture store. So I had to let my 2 producers assemble the film while I was at work. I felt like I had to let the film go before we were picture locked. Also, in this point in time, I was about to be a dad. During the making of the film, I literally aged what felt like 10 years, from a teenager young man to a grown-up. Finally, everything was done. We held a screening. It was a success. About 200 people showed up, mostly family and friends, but also just people who were interested. I learned what it is to be a director, not just a director, but a responsible one. I can't put the work on everyone else. I have to see this thing through. I learned what it means to direct actors, marketing, cinematography, and so much more. I would never do this again, but I'm thankful. After all of this, I was beyond burnt out. I thought I wanted to be a filmmaker, but I didn't want to pick up a camera again. This made me think whether I should keep making stuff, if this was my thing. Like I said, I was incredibly depressed throughout, with more downs than ups. The only thing that kept me going was shooting this film. If I hadn't been shooting, planning, editing, rehearsing every day, I probably would have ended it all. The film was done, we had shown it to everyone, and I felt empty. The worst part of it all was wrapping up the premiere and the after party, and then going to work the day after. Everything was back to normal. Of course, things weren't normal. I had never felt so bad, like I had let everyone down and myself. Like, why did I do any of this? After this, I started a family. I kept going to work, and maybe if I had the time, shoot little things here and there, like music videos. Then, about a year later, with the help of my lovely partner, I decided to enroll in the Icelandic Film School. I got in, I think partially because I actually made a feature film before. Funny to say, but after making an entire feature, I felt like I didn't know anything about filmmaking. I spent the next 2 years working my ass off, making short films and smaller projects, and this time with a deadline. I absolutely loved it. I graduated on December of 2021 with my thesis film, Rakel, a story about misery, and I will put it up on this channel also. I know people have different opinions about film school, but in my experience, I put my whole self into the education, and it paid off immensely. I currently work in television, the same station that interviewed me years prior. It's a job I wouldn't have gotten if I didn't go to school. And I felt like finally I had some purpose. After all of this, I feel very thankful for having spent all this time making this mediocre, art house-esque, borderline unwatchable movie. Today I don't feel like talking about the feature I made to anyone, but I keep coming back to it whenever I'm thinking about making something big like this again, a cautionary tale. So, the moral of the story: plan ahead, be confident, work on your mental health, see a therapist, and don't let it break you permanently. That's it. Thank you. What I used to make the film, for anyone who's interested: the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera Original, the Panasonic GH4 for some pickup shots, a Konica Minolta 50mm f1.8, Olympus 12-40 f2.8 constant aperture, Samyang 14mm f2.8, a LED work light from Halo, Fancier Studio shoulder mount, Fieldworld 7-inch monitor, some tripod, I don't know, the Zoom H4n sound recorder, the Rode NTG shotgun mic, Smart Lavs, Final Cut and Premiere to edit, caffeine, and about $3,000 worth of junk food. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something from this, and peace out.